Ferrari is trying to respond to a season that has turned out to be much more complex than expected. Initial expectations for the SF25 built on fragile foundations have collapsed due to its technical reality. Inside the pit, work is intense to adapt the car to the characteristics of the tracks and to exploit every bit of its potential. Despite the obvious limitations, Charles Leclerc managed to extract the maximum, achieving 2 consecutive podiums also thanks to favorable circumstances. In Monaco, he was able to rely on his pure talent on city tracks, while in Barcelona he was helped by a series of favorable events. He climbed onto the podium with a single-seater that on paper lacked the pace. Stay until the end, because I show you the hidden signals that no one has noticed, from the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile inspections to Hamilton's future, and I explain why these next few weeks will decide everything. It's a critical juncture for the Rosa. They must choose the right path. If you like the videos, hit like to support me, and now let's get started right away. Leclerc continues to show how much it matters to be used to racing with cars that are not always up to par. Since his debut in Formula 1, he has had to handle complex situations, almost always managing to maximize results. He has an innate determination and never backs down, always trying to bring home more than what the car would allow him. It's a different situation for Lewis Hamilton, who is experiencing the adaptation to Ferrari in a similar way to what happened in the last seasons at Mercedes. When the car is not competitive, the 7-time world champion tends to disengage. His approach, understandable also considering the stage of his career he is in, is less reactive. The few times he had a competitive car, he proved he can still make a difference. But in 2025, aside from the victory in the sprint in China, he often seemed more of a spectator than a protagonist. The integration process at Ferrari is not easy and is further hindered by a car that does not give the driver the necessary confidence to push to the limit. Carlos Sainz, now at Williams, is going through a tough adaptation period, further highlighted by his teammate Albon's comfort with the British car. Nevertheless, Ferrari plans to persist with development. The team has planned a gradual update, with the first step expected in Austria. This is a new version of the car's underbody designed not so much to provide an immediate performance increase, but to serve as a basis for subsequent developments, especially near the rear axle. It's a functional update designed to prepare the single-seater for future developments, which will be introduced progressively. In Barcelona, Leclerc clearly highlighted how the current technical level of the SF25 is not sufficient to consistently fight for the podium. He knows that without updates, it will be difficult to repeat those results. However, the Monegasque continues to push, trusting that the ongoing work can bring about concrete improvements in the short term. Vassar has reiterated the desire to continue focusing on this season without abandoning 2025 in favor of 2026. Hamilton, on the other hand, has a different approach. His recent statements indicate a vision more projected towards the long term. The Englishman states that 2025 will be a transition phase to better understand the team's structures, processes, and internal dynamics. The goal is to build the foundations from now on to be prepared for the new regulatory cycle of 2026. A strategic approach born from his experience that aims to make the most of the available time to develop a single-seater that is finally up to the ambitions. Hamilton knows well that winning projects are built well in advance. The question is whether Ferrari will follow his vision or continue to invest resources in an attempt to save a season that is already compromised, even at the cost of sacrificing 2026. A choice that could make a difference not only in the results but also in the internal cohesion of the team. During the 9-seasonal weekend, the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile took the opportunity to expand the scope of technical checks on the single-seaters, carrying out not only the planned checks on the flexibility of the wings, but also a first examination aimed at the lower part of the cars. This was a preliminary phase to the application of the technical directive TD015, focused in particular on the skid blocks integrated into the plank. These components mounted in the central skate under the car floor have small holes that are used to measure their wear. The regulation stipulates that it must not exceed 10% of the overall thickness, therefore about 1 mm. When the bottom touches the asphalt, the skid block produces the typical sparks we see in the race. It's the same element that in the past has caused dry grass to ignite, as happened in Suzuka. During the Barcelona weekend, Federation technicians analyzed some steel skid blocks installed in place, those in titanium, a material currently mandatory for the entire grid. The test did not involve all the stables and was conducted as part of an experimental plan, which could lead to a regulation update should further incidents related to fire risk occur. For now, titanium remains the regulatory standard. However, stainless steel is kept under observation and tested in selected contexts. The Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile's goal is to ensure that a material with different consumption characteristics is not exploited to circumvent the technical limits related to the wear of the bottom. It's an assessment that could also influence the 2020 C6 regulation, since the plank is one of the few elements confirmed for the next regulatory cycle, even in the absence of the venturi. In parallel, the Federation has continued with checks on the front wings according to the flexion parameters imposed by the directive.
TD018 during
the Spanish Grand Prix, the inspections were numerous and repeated. Just before the qualifying phase, Ferrari was subjected to an extra check. The SF25 was summoned to the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile garage for a detailed inspection on the front wings, with a visibly tense atmosphere. At the end of the check, Tognanelli consulted with Vasseur, D'Ambrosio, and Serra, but the official details on the reasons were not communicated. It is known that in the past, the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile had repeatedly rejected Ferrari's front-wing prototypes during the validation phase, asking the Maranello team to present a version in line with the new guidelines. And it is precisely this detail that makes the Montmello check special. It was a component already known, already seen on the track, yet only Ferrari was called for such an in-depth inspection. The images collected after the check do not show obvious differences compared to previous versions, but it remains to be clarified what prompted the Federation to proceed with that additional check. The answers could come in Canada, where the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile has already planned new tests on aeroelasticity. The 2025 chapter of Ferrari in Formula 1 now seems to be heading in a very specific direction. The hopes that the TD018 directive could disrupt the established balance have dissolved with the Barcelona weekend. No real revolution was seen on the track. The much-announced regulatory crackdown on wing flexibility did not affect McLaren or Red Bull. The feeling is that only in Ferrari did they believe or pretend to believe that something would change. The disappointment is tangible. After the Spanish Grand Prix, the balance is ruthless with 15 races still to go, but no concrete sign that suggests a possible comeback. Leclerc has achieved another podium, but it remains an episodic result, the product of favorable circumstances and not of actual technical progress. The car continues to suffer from structural problems, and it's clear that the podium achieved in Catalonia should not deceive. It's a result that masks a much more complex reality. Hamilton, in the meantime, shows clear signs of frustration. His approach has become indicative of the internal health of the team. Having arrived in Maranello with the promise of a winning project, he finds himself struggling with an unpredictable and uncommunicative single-seater. The SF25 does not give him confidence or technical consistency, and this is reflected in his distant and unmotivated attitude since Thursday in Barcelona. In parallel, McLaren continues to develop with surgical precision, setting their own pace with a series of timely and effective updates. Ferrari, on the other hand, seems to still be chasing a clear technical identity. From here, the inevitable reflection. Does it still make sense to focus resources on a project that evidently will never live up to the ambitions? Inside the team, the debate is open. On one hand, there are those like Leclerc and Vasseur who continue to push not to give up on 2025. On the other hand, Hamilton invites to look beyond. The new regulatory era foresees the return to the flat bottom, the elimination of the ground effect active aerodynamics, new tires, and deeply revised power units. A rigorous and advanced planning is needed. In this scenario, every energy spent on the SF25 risks subtracting time and resources from what will be the real test bench for the future Ferrari. Other teams, primarily Red Bull and McLaren, have already shifted the project axis, entrusting the development to well-structured technical teams. Led by officials involved in the transition for months, Max Verstappen is close to disqualification risk. Just one penalty point on his super license is enough to prevent him from participating in the Austrian Grand Prix. The home race for him is at Red Bull or Silverstone, which is even worse. A collision isn't needed to reach that point. A simple minor regulatory infraction such as slowing down too much in qualifying, not maintaining the correct distance behind the safety car, or an unsafe release could be enough to trigger the automatic exclusion. The tension within the team has risen. Red Bull downplays it, but they know well how catastrophic it would be to lose Verstappen for a weekend, especially the one most anticipated by his fans. The situation is already critical in Barcelona. The team mishandled the final stages of the race, putting Max in difficulty. And even though the driver later publicly apologized, the emotional fracture clearly emerged. The day after, Verstappen was already in Salzburg at Hangar 7 for a promotional event behind the wheel of a 2012 RB8. A catwalk, yes, but perhaps also an opportunity to speak directly with the Red Bull management. If he is disqualified, a plan to replace him with the most likely candidate, Liam Lawson, is already well underway. He has experience with the team. He has already raced some weekends in 2024, including a participation with the RB21, and he would be the most immediate and functional replacement. However, despite his recent past in the paddock, there are rumors that his relationship with the team did not end in the best way. Just like what happened to Gasly, Ajar is one of the revelations of 2025, but Red Bull seems to want to protect him from a hasty promotion. The lesson learned with Gasly, Albon and Sainz has left its mark, forcing the issue can burn careers. So Ayumu Iwasa remains the third official Red Bull driver with a super license in his pocket and already a test driver on several occasions. The Japanese driver has accumulated kilometers on the track both with Racing Bulls and with the RB21 and has recent experience with the team in simulator tests and free practice 1. He is the natural candidate for a quick entry, especially if it will be an absence limited to a single race. In all of this, the real anomaly is that we are talking about the concrete possibility that the best driver in the world could be left out of a Grand Prix due to a sum of penalties resulting from minor incidents. It's a regulatory paradox that risks depriving the championship of its protagonist for a trivial incident. But that's how sport works. The rules apply to everyone. The Red Bull Ring, traditionally swarmed by tens of thousands of Dutch fans, risks seeing the race without its favorite. And Red Bull, already under pressure due to the technical crisis of 2024, knows that an absence of Verstappen could turn into a severe image blow. That's why they are working behind the scenes in Milton Keynes and Graz. The team can't afford to be caught unprepared. If you liked the video, hit like, subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss the next ones. Let me know what you think in the comments. And see you next time.